Chapter 18. Working for Granada TV Rentals. I thanked God for within 1 week I was interviewed for a job at Granada TV Rentals and got the job. I started work for Granada TV Rentals Limited on the 25th of the 2nd, 1974, being paid £37.27 per week, with a company car, £3.72 per week as a vehicle allowance. I found working for Granada a fresh breath of air and got on real well, and within 6 months I was promoted to workshop manager, finding the work very challenging and rewarding. The only problem was I worked too hard and was inefficient. It was during this time that I contacted Michael of C.J. Ward & Son. He was the apprentice, asking him if he wanted a job at Granada. He was the apprentice for C.J. Ward & Son. Whilst working for them, he told me he wanted to leave as soon as he could. He was fed up with being treated second-rate and hated having to stub out the cigarette end of John Ward in an ashtray. John Ward was the son of the boss. He came to Granada, passed all the tests, and he was accepted. He joined Granada as a technician in October 1974. My visit to Northern Ireland. I was encouraged to have a break from work, and in July 1974 I was invited by Owen McChrystal to visit his home in Omagh, Northern Ireland. He lived in a town called Omagh in County Tyrone. Owen had a television business called Crystal TV. He started his business by bringing a van load of second-hand TV sets from England to the town Omagh, and began to rent and repair washing machines and televisions. I was invited out to teach one of his employees, who he called Ivan, and I taught him colour television theory. Owen maintained he was a genius, as he could fix televisions without knowing how they worked. He maintained anyone could repair a TV set if they knew how they worked, so he must be a genius, as he could repair them not knowing how they worked. Owen's wife was a Catholic, and I think they viewed my religious beliefs with scepticism. I was unaware of all the conflicts in Northern Ireland and completely ignorant. I had heard people speak evil of Ian Paisley, and all I knew was that Reverend Ian Paisley had preached a sermon called Second My Religion, and I knew from listening to that sermon he was a man of God and preached the truth about the Lord Jesus Christ. I decided on my way through Belfast I would stop the night and visit the Martyrs Memorial Church where Ian Paisley preached the next day. When I arrived in Belfast, I was amazed to see all the soldiers with guns, checking everybody and watching out for trouble. It was the 12th of July, 1974, when I arrived on one of the streets in Belfast. I noticed all the streets and doorways were barred up, and streets very clear with soldiers on every corner. I was unaware of what the 12th of July was all about. It was the end of the day, and a lot of parades and marching had gone on that day. It was a day of celebration to some people. I ended knocking on the guest house door to find 2 ladies running the guest house. I had arrived, unannounced, with a large, suspicious suitcase in my hand from England. I said I would like to stay the night and asked if they knew where Martyrs Memorial Church was. They looked at me, gone out, and asked me what was an Englishman doing visiting Belfast during all these troubles. I said I wanted to hear Ian Paisley preach. I said I had heard him preach on a record, and he preached the gospel. They said they were Catholics, and they were too afraid to go and hear him preach, even though they would like to. They made me welcome, and I had a pleasant stay, learning a bit about the troubles in Northern Ireland. In the morning, as I carried my suspicious-looking suitcase through the streets of Belfast, I had occasion to ask a milkman the way to Martyrs Memorial Church, and he replied that I was in the wrong part of Belfast to be asking directions like that, and directed me to a certain road. I realised this must have been a Catholic area, but I really was so naive I didn't know what was going on at all. I ended up in a newspaper shop asking directions, and my eye caught a picture of a man called Carson on a postcard. To make conversation, I asked the shopkeeper, who was this person Carson? And she spoke scathingly to me, saying I ought not to ask such questions like that. I then realised I must have been in the wrong area. I arrived at Martyrs Memorial Church building, and Dr. Ian Paisley was preaching. It was a very large building, with figureheads of martyrs all around the building. Dr. Paisley preached faithfully the truth about the Lord Jesus Christ, and I could not understand why people should oppose him like I'd heard. In that meeting, I heard no mention of politics. I only heard about the Lord Jesus Christ and what he had done for sinners. I concluded it must have been the tone of his voice or way of speaking. I felt people must not be listening to his message, but rather the tone of his voice. I could imagine him speaking against the enemies of truth and using his tongue like a bastard file. After the meeting, I asked Dr. Paisley to direct me to someone who could help me to get to Omar, as I was a visitor. I finally got transport that day to Omar. I ended up joining a group of Christians from the Free Presbyterian Church of Omar. I was given an orange sash and joined their march along the streets and lanes of Omar. We then went to a meeting, and the preacher was Reverend Willie McRae. I had a good time in Omar, staying at my friend's home. Owen didn't believe the gospel, and he was a nominal Roman Catholic, and we had long talks about the things of God. Ivan confided with me that he was a Christian, but he didn't like to say too much to Owen. It might not have gone down too well for him and Owen could give him a hard time. The pace of life seemed much slower than in Aylesbury, and everyone I spoke to seemed to have knowledge as to what it means to be born again or to be saved. Even Owen and his wife, who were Catholics, knew the terms and used them. It was not like that in England. I had a good time in Ireland and would like to go again sometime. Sometime after that, after I was married and had 2 children, that's Isaac and Esther, we went to London to hear Dr. Ian Paisley preach at a Reformation conference on the 14th of May 1983. At that meeting, Isaac and Esther sat on Dr. Ian Paisley's knee and cried their eyes out, so we took a photograph. Click the link below of this video to hear the sermon preached in 1983 by Dr. Ian Paisley.